Health Detective podcast by Functional Diagnostic Nutrition. My name is Evan Transu, aka Detective Ev, and I will be your host for today's show, episode number 449 of the Health Detective podcast. Moving right along here. I see some of you hopping back on the stream. Sorry for my technical difficulties before. I was reading my guest's bio, and as I'm reading this, I can't actually see what else is going on, so I didn't realize that something glitched for us. So we are all good to go now. If you're listening to this on audio, you're probably like, what the heck happened? Well, if you're listening on audio, you're like 2 weeks past this, so you guys are all good to go. I do have a quick announcement today before we get into the interview. And what's cool is actually this person that I'm interviewing today was at this event last year, so you'll get a firsthand account of whether she liked it or not and what happened there, because some good things did indeed happen. So that is the HICS event in beautiful San Diego, California. And this is happening October 9th through 11th of this year, 2025. So if you do not have a ticket yet and you somehow are still able to make it on short notice, please get your ticket. I know that they're going to sell out. I know that they're extremely close. So I apologize if you're watching this a few days after and the tickets are gone. I respectfully take no responsibility for that at this point. We've been advertising this for you guys for a few months. So we want you to make it if you can. And if you're going to make that last minute decision, just go get the ticket. You can always get a hotel room. You can always get a flight. You can always rent a car. We can't create more tickets out of thin air because there is a capacity for the place that they are at. So that is hicks-live.com. And you can use code HIX15 for 15% off. That's hicks-live.com. And you can use code HIX, all capital letters, 15 for 15% off, assuming that there are still tickets. Now, let's get to our wonderful guest today, who I met last year. Kailey Campos is a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner, certified yoga and Pilates instructor, and founder of Renewed Holistics, a brand rooted in functional healing, movement, and nervous system support. With over a decade of experience in marketing and brand strategy, Kailey blends science, strategy, and soul to help clients optimize their health from the inside out. Her practice focuses on personalized protocols using functional lab testing, macro-based nutrition, and somatic-informed tools to support gut health, hormone balance, energy, and sustainable lifestyle change. Through Renewed Holistics, Kailey is redefining what it means to feel good in your body by building habits that feel natural, intuitive, and grounded. And Kailey, if I did it right this time and we didn't get a glitch, I'm hoping that you're about to say something back to me when I welcome you officially to the Health Detective podcast.
Yes, I'm here, Ev. Thanks so much for the intro.
The nervousness that went through my body when I said welcome last time and I heard nothing, I'm like, oh gosh, what is this? So we're glad to finally have you on. Again, we will talk about her experience last year at the conference because there is some very cool things there that are relevant to our topic at hand today. But Kailey, I want to start with you in the exact same way that we start with everyone who comes on this show. I know that you have a personal health story, and I'd like to know, if we can, what were your health symptoms and what did your health symptoms look like and when did they first begin, to the best of your memory?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely started in my teen years. I think this happens for a lot of women where you get your period, you start experiencing these hormonal changes, you go to the doctor, and what's the first thing they recommend? Birth control. So started that at 15. That kind of put a pause on some of my symptoms until I got into my early 20s. Then I started to experience more intense gut symptoms. I kind of figured out on my own that I had candida overgrowth after seeing lots of doctors, going for specialty care with a gastroenterologist, getting endoscopies, like you name it. We tried all of the things. And that was just kind of like my eye-opening experience to recognize that I'm the only person that is going to care about my health the way that I want to be cared for. And so that was the start of my journey.
Was it as simple as you just made it seem? Because I feel like in hindsight, we kind of share these things and like, oh, it's matter of fact, but that sounds like a pretty big level of responsibility to take for your health at any age, right? Like most of us are not equipped to naturally do that. So like, was that really that easy as a transition, or was it just you're so tired with other things not working that you just felt there's no other option?
Definitely not that easy. I think in the beginning of anyone's health journey, right, we experience a lot of this trial and error. And I think in my early 20s, I was not ready to take on the responsibility of healing myself and really committing to my health the way that I probably should have, could have, but shoulda, woulda, coulda. I went through a lot of those changes. Of course, I'd try something for a month. It didn't work. So I'm like, F it. We're going back to living life, enjoying things that we want to in our 20s. So it took me a while to get to that point of realization where I wasn't fully committed. I had one foot in, one foot out, and that obviously wasn't working for me because I was still feeling the same. I was struggling with really debilitating migraines that kind of changed over time. They would be, a day at a time. I'd have to go to sleep early, be in a dark room, take lots of Excedrin. And then they kind of transitioned to lasting 2 to 3 days at a time, where even Excedrin wasn't working. I can't even imagine what I was doing to my poor liver at this time too. And so that's kind of what resulted me to where I am today, where I'm now gluten-free, alcohol-free. I really, really avoid taking over-the-counter medications if at all possible. So definitely not as easy as I made it seem in the beginning, but it's all about, the process, the journey.
When you did take responsibility for your health, I'm always fascinated by people's mindsets because mine was, a little wild at the time. I'm trying to figure all this out. Why did you even believe that this was something that could be figured out by yourself? And I hope that makes sense, because if Western medicine is not working in the way that you wanted it to, the next logical conclusion for everyone is not that, oh, I must need to take responsibility for this. Many people, unfortunately, start to conclude, hey, these very smart and usually otherwise well-meaning people couldn't figure this out. I'm kind of just stuck with this. So figure this out on your own.
It was a very defining moment. I remember sitting in the gastroenterology office with my physician at the time. We had done the endoscopy. They didn't find anything. Because they didn't find anything, I had started some of my own research, and my symptoms really aligned with candida overgrowth. And so I remember asking him about his thoughts, and he specifically said to me, there is nothing that I can do for candida, because if I give you an antibiotic, it's going to make it worse. And that in my mind was like, okay, well, there's got to be something then. And all of the research that I found had really focused on changing your diet. This was, at this point, probably 10 years ago. So, we didn't have supplements the way that we do now. That it wasn't commonplace for us to have access to all of these different things. And so that's where I started. I started by changing my diet. I eliminated alcohol, eliminated gluten. I eliminated even from animal proteins, buying things that had no antibiotics, that were more pasture raised, stuff like that. So that was my initial moment. And I remember feeling the relief in some of my symptoms where I finally wasn't nauseous anymore. And that was the light bulb. That was the light bulb moment that happened for me.
Gotcha. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. I feel like this is, it's so interesting because the health symptoms can be so different. But when I interview people, the whole story conceptually ends up being very similar, because once you get that first win on your own, that to me, when I experienced that, that was the thing where I'm like, okay, I don't need anything else. I know that this first win is not my only win. I didn't know how far I could take it, but I also knew just logically, there's no way that I just got lucky enough to get the only win I'm ever going to get here doing this natural thing. So I must be lacking knowledge, and there's got to be something else here. Yeah. How did that end up leading to you taking this to a whole separate level, which is actually training in this stuff and becoming an FDN? Because again, there's multiple categories here. There's one category of even being willing to think outside the box and assuming that you can do this on your own. And then it is a whole separate type of person that says, I actually want to do this when I grow up. This is what I want to do with my career and my life. So when did you decide that? And how did you actually find things like FDN or any other programs if you did go through any other ones?
Yeah, I think it almost started, I'm a very curious person. I will consider myself a lifelong learner. I am truly passionate about always learning more. And I started treating myself like my own science experiment. And so I had that first win. And then I kind of started testing different things out, right? I think women overall, we prescribe to this more masculine way of living where we're, working out really hard 6 to 7 days a week. We're, engaging with food very differently. We're trying to do all of the things, but we're only getting 5 to 6 hours of sleep. And so I really started to like test some of those things out. And as I learned along the way, some things worked, some things didn't. But as you mentioned in my bio, I worked in marketing for 15 years. And we always say in specifically the advertising world is, we're not saving lives. But it had gotten to a point where I was so stressed, so burnt out. I'm very type A. And it got to the point where my work was making me sicker, despite all of the things that I was doing. And so I obviously was confused because I thought I was on this path. And then, I'd taken 10 steps forward. And then all of a sudden, one day, it felt like I had taken 5 steps backwards. And so this is part of, I think the catalyst was I was laid off from my job unexpectedly. And I'm like, well, what am I going to do now? I've got all this time on my hands. Might as well give this a try. And so I signed up for IIN. That was my first introduction to more of like the holistic health space. Did that in 6 months, started following somebody who also did IIN, but was in the middle of her FDN program. And that for me, like I said, I like to treat myself as my own science experiment. And the idea that FDN was more scientifically backed really had more of that internal education component was what I was lacking. And that's what kind of set it off.
It's interesting because I know better than to ask a woman her direct age, but based on your story, it sounds like we're similar enough here. And it's always interesting to know that there's other people going through similar symptoms, but also going through similar journeys at the same time. Because I did IIN first and then found FDN as well. And Reed always says, and I believe this 100%, we love IIN. They have such amazing marketing, right? You would know this as a marketer. They're bringing people into this space left and right, and they do such a good job at helping with those foundationals. And then for those hyper nerds like us that want to take it to the next level, I wish I had the numbers on it because without exaggeration, I know for a fact it's at least like 25 to 30% of the people that go through FDN went through IIN first. And it might even be higher than that. So we owe those guys a lot. Maybe I should be reaching out to them for some type of partnership. Right? We'll save that for the future. Yeah. So I want to kind of bring this together in a slightly different way than we normally would in the podcast. Guys, of course, we're going to end up talking about some of the specific things that worked for Kailey and her health. But I wanted to make sure we got to this other thing today, which was around your experience at Hicks. Not only just to shout it out, we could shout it out with a million people. I could have Jeremy Maleka back on to talk about Hicks. But I think it's really cool to get to talk to someone like you who is a consumer of the conference and some of the things that happened as a result of that, because everyone that comes into FDN is in a different position. You and I came in at younger phases of our life where we still definitely have to make money for the rest of our life. Right. We also attract people who might be towards the end of their career and they might be able to just make some side money here and there getting clients. But for you and I, when we're committing to this space, when my wife's committing to this space, we got to figure this out for real. So can we talk about what made you decide to take the plunge and go to Hicks last year? Because it was the first time it was done, so you don't even know if it's a good conference yet. Right. What made you decide to want to do it? And then can we please talk about this really cool experience and opportunity that you had there?
Yeah. I mean, I think anybody who is in this space as a career can recognize how isolating it can be. I mean, especially when you sign up for a program like FDN and you're committing hours of your time each week, some people more than others, and your head's down a computer. I mean, I spent all of my career being in office, and then obviously COVID happened. We transitioned everything to being virtual online, but I was really lacking that social component. I'm a very social being, very extroverted. And so I think the lure of Hicks was just being able to be in a room surrounded by people who all had, for the most part, very similar mindsets or interests in their health the way that I did. And so that was the first thing. But I think also for me, it was, how do I think a few steps ahead? I hadn't graduated FDN yet. I knew I wanted to make a business out of it. I wanted to have income that I can live off of, right? I wasn't just doing this here and there. And I was like, I need to be around people who have made this a career. And Hicks felt like the perfect place for that. And so that's what got me there. I set a goal for myself that very, very first night when we did the cocktail hour was that I was going to talk to as many people as I possibly could.
Nice.
As I possibly could. I was walking up to people that normally I would be so nervous to say anything to, right? People that who are leaders in the space. I've seen them on Instagram. They have hundreds of thousands of followers. And I was just walking right up to them. Why? Because we're all in the same place. And so I think there's also a component of not looking at people from a hierarchical sense, right? Like we're all equals. And that's what Hicks felt like. It felt like a place where we could all be equals. And then that's what led to that really awesome opportunity.
Well, and we have to remember too that everyone's still a human being, no matter where they are on that hierarchy, as you said. And I admit, right, because like, okay, I'm not someone with 100,000 followers, but Hicks is about as cool as I'll ever be, right, Kailey? Like that's pretty sweet when we have all the FDNs around. When someone comes up to me or someone comes up to Reed and says, "Hey, we listen to you all the time. Like, we love your stuff." Like, why would I'm just being honest. Like that feels good. Why would I not want that, right? So to your point, having that courage to go out to those people that might be these massive names in the space, like really big ones. I don't think they wanted to get into like an hour-long conversation about my life story, for example. That's not what they're there to do. But if you go up to them and you say, "Hey, I love your work. So glad you're here. Great speech today."
Yeah.
What human being is not going to like that? And then at least you have that connection. You got to shake the hands and all that stuff. And I hope everyone, because I don't want to skip over this part. I hope everyone just took a second to hear what you said. Nothing was like rocket science. It's just courage. That's it. You had the courage to buy the ticket before you graduated. You had the courage to actually show up at the place and go do the stuff. And then you had the courage once you're there to shake the hands, look people in the eye, and do all that. That is not something that you need a PhD to understand how to do. You just need some guts and a little bit of courage. And I think a lot of this comes from, Reed brought this up recently because I kept using the word courage. And he's like, well, if it's not courage, it's a mission. It's a why, right? When you already know what that why is or what that mission is. And in your case, it was a practical mission. It's not only a health-based one, but you knew you had to make this work, right? You have to get the business side of this down. So when the mission and the why is strong enough, all of a sudden, it gets a little bit easier to do some of those things. And it obviously worked out for you. So let's talk about now, like what connection did you make there and what did that lead to, or how did that lead to what you're doing now?
Yeah. I mean, again, like you said, any of the introductions that I made, it wasn't like this crazy long conversation. It was really just like putting a face to a name, having people recognize who I am, that I was taking the initiative to say hi, to commend them, or even like correlate, hey, I really resonated with this thing that you said. And like you said, it makes people feel good. What person would not give you like a positive response or just like a thank you acknowledgement for reaching out and saying hello? So that was that. But like I said, talking to as many people as I could. It didn't matter who they were, right? And and it wasn't really about like, oh, well, I'm really trying to get a job opportunity out of this. But it happened naturally because I had had a conversation with somebody. They knew I was from LA, and it was actually Jeremy Maleka who made the introduction. He's like, hey, we've got a naturopath here. He is looking for some help in his clinic in Beverly Hills. I know you're located in LA. Would you like to connect with him? And of course I did. We did a little interview. I kind of touched on the fact that I do some marketing work and that I was graduating from FDN. So that was the start of the relationship. So fast forward, I started working with him November of last year, just post Hicks. Fast forward to today, I've been doing all the nutrition protocols for his patients at his naturopathic clinic in Beverly Hills. And I've now even grown that opportunity, and I am helping him with his marketing strategy for his naturopathic clinic. And I actually am helping support EndoAxis as well, which was previously a speaker at Hicks last year.
If people don't listen to my stuff, normally they wouldn't get why I'm like making these expressions, right? I'm like, come on, like this is it. And the reason I'm saying it that way, with the exception of the marketing, because you had been in that for, I think you said 15 years, you have a background in it. So fair enough. That's a separate situation.
Yeah.
But one of my favorite quotes is, fortune favors the bold. And that doesn't mean that you're getting rich off working with this guy. That's not what I'm saying. But
Right.
fortune means good fortune. Good things come to us if you're bold. And so what happened with you, and I hope this is taken the right way because I mean this respectfully, you
Yeah.
weren't even graduated yet. So
Right.
objectively, you are less qualified than an FDN who's been graduated for 2 or 3 years. How does it work then for you? Because you showed up.
Mhm.
And then when you showed up, you actually engaged with other people. So the reason I make an expression like this is like, I don't know. I try to lay this out for people all the time. And only a few are going to actually do it. But I encourage you guys, and I see a lot of activity in the chat. I can't always read it right away. But I know that some of you guys are going to be at Hicks this year. So actually, can you just put a me in the chat, please, if you're going to be at Hicks this year? Because listen to Kailey's story. Take these advantage of these opportunities and go out, shake some hands, make a goal for how many people you want to talk to. If you've never been to a conference before, make your goal 20. That's totally doable in this conference. You probably can do a lot more, but 20 would be great. If you've been to a conference before and you've already talked to 10 or 20 people in a weekend, make it 40. Figure it out. And what's great, and Kailey, you could probably touch on this. I feel like Jen and Jeremy, who host Hicks, they do such a great job, right, at making sure that we have those opportunities and times to talk to other people, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, like Jen sets up these specific times for you guys. That Thursday night and Thursday afternoon, if you guys are going to be there a little bit early, make sure you're signed up for our meetup at Reed's, because we'll have a 2.5-hour meetup. You get to meet the founder of FDN. That would be probably a decent connection to have in your back pocket. I don't know. It worked out for me. I got a podcast out of it. So the other thing too is that Thursday night is literally just a meet and greet networking evening. So everyone gets to hang out in a beautiful area right on Mission Bay in San Diego. A lot of people have drinks. Some people don't drink, and that's totally fine too. We have gluten-free hors d'oeuvres for everyone, and you get to go chat and hang out and have that opportunity. So let's see what's in the chat here and if anyone is actually showing up. We got Tony saying me. Awesome, Tony. Crystal said me. Deborah T said me. And I promised to do my best because she's an introvert, she said. So she's here hoping other extroverts say hi. Well, here's another secret, Deborah. What you can do is attach on to a Kailey. You can attach on to an Ev. So extroverts like us, we like to have introverts with us that will listen to us all the time. So we bring them places. That's why I have my wife, right? This is actually true, by the way. This is actually how high I score. When you take those professional tests, I score in the 98th percentile of extroversion, which is a very ironic thing to say as I keep talking right now. But my wife scores in about the 11th or 12th percentile. So we love bringing our introverts along places, Deborah, and we're happy to introduce you to folks. So, Kailey, we'll kind of go a different direction now. I mean, it sounds like you've had a great experience so far, and that led to additional opportunities, which I think is amazing. So my only one other question there, and then I want to talk more about actually some of the health side, and hopefully you're doing better with certain things. But do you see that, like, will you be at this opportunity over the long run now, or is your goal ultimately to have your own business? Obviously, either's fine. I'm wondering what your longer term vision is now.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that I am a multi-passionate person. I do truly enjoy marketing, but I had gotten to the point in my career where I wasn't necessarily marketing brands that I love. I think one of the benefits of being an FDNP and working with your own clients is you also get to be a brand ambassador for those brands that you love. So I wanted to blend those two things. I wanted to blend my ability to educate and help people heal themselves. I wanted to bring together the marketing, but I also wanted to do it by supporting businesses that I aligned with. And so making that transition, I think, intention is a really big part of opportunity, is that I kind of had it in my mind that I would continue doing some marketing consulting, but it would be for wellness specific brands. And that's exactly what happened naturally, because to your point, I kind of had the courage to just put myself out there, not with an expectation or an immediate goal, but just kind of opening things up for my brain to recognize those opportunities when they arise. I like to tell clients too, the brain cannot see what it does not know. So if you just in any capacity, if it's from an opportunities perspective, from a healing perspective, if you're constantly putting in this information in your minds that you're limited, that you're unable to achieve beyond your beliefs, then unfortunately, that's a barrier that you have to cross. If you open those things up and you're just kind of setting the stage for all of the things that could possibly happen, you're setting that stage for your brain to recognize when those things come up. So
Oh man, I love that. Are you a self-help book reader by any chance?
absolutely. Could you tell?
Yes. I know I'm huge into that as well. And it's very unfortunate. I don't see it as much in this space. I think a lot of people in this health space are open to that, but it's so crazy to me how many people like almost dismiss that kind of stuff. And then funny enough, usually the people that are dismissing some form of self-help might be the people that need it the most, respectfully.
Yeah.
There's a famous book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. And you just reminded me of one of his quotes from there. So long story short, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, guys, is just about his real dad. It's not that he was literally poor. It's just that he was not financially literate. And his rich dad was his friend's dad, supposedly, who was extremely financially literate and would teach him a lot of lessons about finances and investing. And Robert Kiyosaki ended up being a wildly famous and successful investor and author and speaker. And he claims that one of the lessons that his rich dad taught him was you're never allowed to say you can't afford something. You say, how can I afford something? Now, this is the reason people dismiss this stuff, Kailey, right? They're like, oh, come on, Ev. Like, just because I said, how can I afford something doesn't mean I'm going to have $1 million in my bank account tomorrow. Well, guys, yes, those of us that are reading the books, we know that. We're very aware of that. Here's what I do know, though. If I say I can't afford something, I have shut down these God-given creative faculties that lie between my ears, and I'm never going to come up with the idea because I've already said I can't afford it. Mm-hmm. If I say, how can I afford it? Well, of course, I don't have the answer right now. If I had the answer right now, I wouldn't be asking, how can I afford it, right? I would just go out and buy it. Right. But you start, well, okay, maybe it's a $500,000 house, which probably won't get you much in the United States nowadays. But let's say back in the good old day when that would get you a mansion. So $500,000 house, okay, I make X amount now. Well, my rent's this much. I would need the mortgage to be this much. Well, that's not that much more. So maybe if I did this or I added this or I found this path or this source of income, you start getting creative. And the more time you spend with it, it's kind of amazing what your mind can come up with. So I know I'm linking it to finances, but I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, that seems like the concept that you're talking about, right? Is keeping that open mind and prompting yourself so that you see the solutions.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, there's another book too that I definitely recommend, or audiobook, is 10X is easier than 2X, right? It's the same idea, especially for FDNs. If you set a goal that I just want to get one client, what happens after you get that one client, right? But if your goal is, I want to get 10 clients, and I know, and like Jen Maleka talks about this, is how you package your, or how you price out your packages, right? Like, you don't start small just because you don't have the experience that you think that you need. But if your goal is to live your life on an income from FDN, you've got to price things accordingly. So if you start small, then that's a lot harder for you to get 10 clients at, $500 a package than it is to get one client at $5,000 a package, right? So definitely in line with the finance piece that you mentioned.
Yeah, I hope. Wow, there's a lot of gold in here today. I'm loving the way that this conversation's going. So I hope people get that as well, though. Like, because you see me in the graduate group probably all the time trying to talk about this. Like, it is hard for people to conceptualize that it is legitimately easier to get one $5,000 client than it is to get 10 $500 ones. So like, oh, well, it's easier to sell a $500 package. It's like, okay, maybe, yes, if we're talking one-to-one, sure, it's probably easier to sell a $5 thing one time than it is to sell a $5 million thing. I fully get you on that, and I understand. But when you start scaling it, that's when the math kind of breaks apart. Because if I asked you to sell a $5 product 1,000,000 times, that's when you're like, whoa, that's pretty tricky, and you need certain business skills to be able to do that. So very cool there. With that all said, I know one of the things that you wanted to talk about today based on our notes, and I think this is very important for our audience to get to hear, is managing the health journey with this type A entrepreneurial career-driven spirit. And I know that you had even recognized yourself per your story that you had to pull back from some of the stuff with work because that was possibly what was contributing to some of your sickness. But you can take us away from the work, but you can't take the type A out of us. So I'm asking this just as much for me as I am for our audience. What have you learned so far in balancing the type A driven nature that it sounds like you have with also, hey, I'm not in the best place health-wise and I need to work on this? How do you mix both of those together?
I mean, I would first say that assessing your environment can be a really big contributor to, how you're feeling. The biggest thing being, right, like my full-time job, which was majority of my daily environment, was a huge contributor to my stress load. And so that, one of the main factors being that if I took a day off, how much different I felt was red flag for me. So, it's a blessing and a curse to be able to, I guess, see the positive of getting laid off, but I took it as an opportunity to grow. It was an opportunity for me to step back and slow down. Now, I will say I'm still very much that type A personality. I want to go, 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 do. And when I'm not doing, I feel like I can be doing so much more. You also consider, social media is so much a part of people's lives these days that we catch ourselves comparing ourselves to others without recognizing the highlight reel that somebody has chosen to share versus the dark times that they choose not to share. So I had to have, an honest conversation with myself about the things that I needed to succeed. And so that was my work environment, right? Like maybe my spending habits needed to change in order for me to let go of this full-time pay that I was so used to. Supported friends and family members, right? If there were any people in my life, and there were definitely people in my life that I essentially had to cut out because they were not positively contributing to my growth and to the goals that I wanted to achieve. Even as far as, and can be on the extreme side, was I'm born and raised in LA. And I had gotten to the point where even the environment of being in LA was contributing to the way that I wanted to show up, or I felt like I had to show up. And I had to move out of LA, and I've been living in Orange County for a few months now. And even that stark difference, because people are not running around like chickens with their head cut off here in Orange County, right? It's like I can leave my house and people don't feel like they're, it's just not that energy where people are like running the rat race. So these were like the layers that I had to peel back one by one, but still very much considering time management as a component of that.
That's so cool. There's an entrepreneur that I follow, and I know this is not practical for everyone in the exact moment. I get that, but he says like the quickest way to change your life is change your zip code, change the city that you're in, and it's a clickbaity-ish thing, right? It's without context. It's just that sentence more or less. But to your point, you think about how many things you can nail down with what you just said. One, the literal side of just changing the environment. LA. Interestingly, it's like one of the few cities I haven't been to in America. But from what I understand, it's not necessarily San Diego, right? Like it's definitely a lot more crazier than even something like San Diego. So, and you have people from all over the world that know like that's the spot. That's where I could make it big potentially in something like TV or music or whatever it might be. So you have some of the most crazy ambitious people there. And then of course that comparison side. So there's the literal side of just moving for that reason, but also you mentioned friend groups and friend circles. That's a tough one. It's cool to hear you say that, but that is a lot easier said than done. It's sometimes also hard to cut those ties without burning bridges, or maybe I shouldn't project. I've had an issue with not completely burning the bridge while I'm doing that. But one of the really easy ways, quite frankly, is to move, because you don't have to burn a bridge to say, hey, I'm choosing a different chapter of my life and I'm moving here. Still love you as a friend. I'll see you at Christmas. I'll see you at Thanksgiving and stuff like that. But now, that person is not necessarily someone you're hanging out with every weekend. I think that's one of the hardest ones for people to do, because in one sense, these people might be comfortable to be around for a variety of reasons. Two, there might just be like longevity to that relationship, so you don't want to bail on them. And then I think the third one is you feel guilty because it almost seems like you're being condescending. Like, oh, I don't think I believe this. I'm saying that like you might perceive that, oh, I'm acting like I'm better than this person by not talking to them anymore. I adamantly disagree with that. I think we all have these goals that we're heading towards in life. Some people don't have goals at all, right? That's a problem. But if you know where you're going in life, you're going to become the people that you spend the most time with. Those people are going to rub off on you. And so to me, if I have a friend that's going here and I'm going there, I want to be with that friend as much as I practically can be with them, but I don't want to detract them from getting to where that they're going in life if I'm not the best person to help them with that. And I think that's just part of being an adult. But instead, we take the opposite approach. We hang on to what's comfortable. So I'm guessing the friend thing was easier said than done.
Yeah, but I think these things happen naturally, right? And I talk to clients about this too. It is hard in a specific age group if you decide not to engage in alcohol anymore, how these things naturally fall out of place, right? That was the biggest thing for me was I stopped drinking alcohol and then all of a sudden I stopped getting invited to places. Why? Because oh, you can't be around us in a bar if you're not drinking alcohol, which obviously couldn't be further from the truth. But that to me was also the flag of like, well, these people may not be the friends that I thought that they were, and they were just situational acquaintances.
Wow. That's got to be tough though to realize that at the same time, I feel like.
It is, but when you are further and deeper in your health journey and you're committing to yourself and you see all of the different things that you start to thrive in when you feel your best, when you're engaging in practices that make you feel good, it gets a lot easier, right? Because it's almost like that compounding effect. When you're drinking alcohol and you're eating gluten and you're eating bad food, you don't know which one it is actually causing your problem, right? Because it's all compounded on top of each other. So when you start to peel those things back, you build this awareness that you completely thought was gone, like it didn't even exist anymore. That's a big component of what I talk to with my clients as well, is like intuitively you've got the answers, they're just crowded by all of these other things that are preventing you from seeing it.
Gotcha. I think you're right too about that natural separation now that I'm thinking about it. Cause like my life was very wacky, right? At 18, unfortunately, I've shared this publicly on the podcast before, so I always apologize if it's off-putting to anyone, but this is just a reality. I, in high school, I was using drugs almost every single day, all day, every day. Got kicked out of school 17 days into my senior year, and I was arrested for this. I mean, I went to juvie for a little bit, and within a year and a half time frame, because of the stuff I was blessed enough to like get put in front of me, I went from that person to eating like organic peanut butter, right, with like wheat sandwiches that were like the Ezekiel bread. Now, of course, I don't eat gluten now, but like that was I was 19 years old
Yeah.
doing that stuff, and it did create a natural separation because, and this is the part people won't like, there's a friction that starts to exist right between those two things because it's not that you, for example, couldn't go to the bar and be with those friends without alcohol. You probably would have been willing to do that at least a handful of times.
Yeah.
But the friction exists is because they see you not drinking,
Mm-hmm.
and that gets your thoughts going. So I know this firsthand as someone who was on the really bad end of this. When you start to see people move out of it, it's not that you want bad for them. Most people don't want bad for someone else. It makes it uncomfortable for you because you start thinking, why am I not being like them? Are they judging me? Are they thinking about me and what
Right.
I'm doing? How are they able to break free and I'm still stuck in it? So yeah, I think there's a natural separation that kind of does end up happening because of the friction. And what's great is as we start to evolve into that next level of ourself, I feel like we start to attract these amazing relationships with people who are on a similar journey. So I'm hoping, has that been the case for you? Have you started to attract
Oh,
great new
yeah.
people in your life?
Absolutely. I mean, back into the courage communication was like, I moved to Orange County. I didn't have very many friends out here. So I started to do things by myself that put myself in situations where I was surrounded by people who had that like-mindedness. And I made more friends in a matter of 3 months living in a brand new place than I had collectively across 4 years living in LA in the same time frame of my life. So absolutely, I think again, back to the mindset and opening your brain up to these opportunities is those things will naturally find you if you're putting yourself in a place where it's aligned and it's meant to be.
Very cool. All right, let me go back to our chat here. Of course, we still have about 10 plus minutes left in the chat. Just want to see if there was any more folks. All right, so a lot of people, okay, how did we sign up for Read? So I put a link into the chat, and Katie said, I signed up for the meetup, but I never heard any details to follow. Katie, I did send an email out about a week and a half ago now for carpooling, although a bunch of people answered me for that, and then at least one other person told me that they never got anything. So I'm not exactly sure why that is. Katie, if you're still on and you don't mind doing me a small favor, the email that you signed up with, if you search like evan.transu in your email just to see if it came up in another tab, that'd be very helpful for me. Otherwise, I promise I'll message you individually. Russ, let's see what you have to say here, my friend. I'll be there. The couch is comfortable, but it's never sparked a breakthrough. Get up, show up. The insight, connection, or aha moment I'm meant to hear won't happen unless I'm in the room. Bam. I love that.
Yeah.
all very true.
Mm-hmm.
I quit my nursing job and we moved to a slower paced area. That's great, Tony. Yeah, sometimes that's the answer as well. Deborah, I love this one. This was not at all the conversation I thought I'd be listening to today, but it is honestly just the one I needed. I won't elaborate on personal details, but wanted to thank you. Serendipity indeed. Well, that's what we do on the Health Detective podcast. We post a title, we mostly hit on that topic, and then we go wherever it happens to flow. So for this last 10 minutes, I'll tell you the direction that we're going to be flowing in is around just your own health and some of the lab answers that you got at FDN. I know this was a bit out of order today, so thanks for humoring me, but I would be so mad at myself if I did not ask. When you went through FDN, for those that don't know, we have labs included in the cost of tuition. You're actually required to be your own first client before you go do this with other people. So to the degree that you're willing and able to share here, what were some of the major findings on our foundational labs for your own healing journey?
I mean, first and foremost, you probably could have guessed this, my cortisol through the freaking roof. I mean, that was a big contributor. But obviously, in the FDN program, we learned that it's not just that, right? Cortisol is not just the thing that caused all your problems, but doing the foundational labs together really helped paint the picture for me that, the H. pylori that came back positive was a really big contributor. The my SIG-A being tanked was a contributor for me always being sick. I was experiencing mold exposure at a previous house that once I found that out, I moved within a couple of months. And so it was also just like the really validating feeling of knowing that there were answers and that I did have the power to change them. And then following through with FDN gave me all of those tools. And this is exactly what I communicate to clients too, right? Is that I don't specifically have a niche just yet, but it's because I'm really focused on helping people build a toolbox, right? Whatever that toolbox is, like I have all these skills. You mentioned in my bio, like I use macro-based nutrition. Part of that is because I have found such success as a type A person because I have a plan, right? Like I can remove some of the stress of eating, which I think a lot of us experience in our health journey, myself included, where stress or eating becomes stressful because you're like, I don't even know what to eat. And so having a macro-based plan really helped solidify like, okay, I know that I've got to get this much protein in my meal. And, maybe I can have a little bit more of this on this day. And that's fine. That just gives me a little bit more rigidness in my dinner. And so it offered that flexibility without giving me that super restrictive nature in my diet, which is why I've incorporated that in my client protocols as well. But I would say the other thing too was with H. pylori and all the things we learned, I had to get my boyfriend on a protocol because I knew that I could do all of the right things and I could eradicate the H. pylori and it was going to just come right back if I didn't treat my family as well. So, we learned a lot of things. I think the fact of the matter is that we have a long life, hopefully all of us ahead of us, and we're never going to be 100% healed with no problems, but it's really about being consciously aware of our body to learn these tools and be able to see like, oh, I'm having those like stomach feelings again. Maybe I need to pull back here. Maybe I need to add this supplemental support here. So, just kind of understanding that ebbs and it flows.
It's so true, especially in today's world. Like we're just going to get hit by other stuff. And I think with people, I don't know your specific genetics, but I do imagine that most of us in this space have genetic SNPs that make us a little more susceptible to some of the stressors in today's world. Now, that is not an ultimatum. It's also not a contradiction to what we normally say, which is genes load the gun, environment pulls the trigger. The thing is, the environment is forever changing. I moved cities. You've moved places. We end up in a different relationship. We end up trying a new food. We try a new supplement. So the environment's always changing, or a new job or whatever. So it's not that there's a flaw in the philosophy of genes load the gun, environment pulls the trigger. It's that the environment's changing. And so when you become an FDN or you work with one, I feel like you get equipped with the tools and knowledge necessary to know, okay, I might be going through another little, I don't know if it's an ebb or a flow. We'll call it an ebb. I'm going through this ebb part right now. And I need to just, take a step back and analyze this and see what we're working with. I've had that with mold, and thank God I was in the FDN program already and like knew about this stuff to some degree and even knew to look at it. I honestly sometimes do not know if I'd be alive. I'm not being dramatic or trying to exaggerate. I truly do not understand how I would have done the last 11 years of my life if I did not get into this more holistic side of things, or the last 9 doing FDN. So it's a blessing too when you have those tools and you feel like you know what to do and at least where to go. We have the graduate group and stuff. So if I don't know something, I can always go to you smart folks and get that stuff figured out. So let's see if we have any last second questions for Kailey. Crystal said she just signed up for the meetup. We're looking forward to seeing you. Unfortunately, Kailey had to sell her ticket this year. She will not. It's already sold, folks, so we can't get it to you. But hopefully we'll see you next year as well. And Kailey, do you take personal clients still, or are you just kind of full-time at the business, not taking any personal clients? I want to ask, of course, for the audience members that are related.
I do take clients. So in standard type A fashion, I have about 6 sources of income from the naturopath, from marketing consulting, seeing my own clients and running my own programs with them, and then obviously my own health. So I very much focus and rely on scheduling things out. If I don't schedule them, they won't happen. I won't prioritize them. So I treat my health just as important as my job or a source of income. And so that's why I do what I do. And I still get to enjoy things. Like I was just at a wellness retreat for a week in Tulum. I can't go to Hicks because I have a family wedding. So and that's the beauty of all of this, is that, you know, I can travel and I can see clients virtually, and that's not going to prevent me from running my business.
Yeah, that's a blessing. I try not to take that for granted.
Yeah.
With that said, so then we'll finish up here with this. I'd like to know, for those that aren't clear, who in your personal business, if they are considering working with you now, who is your ideal person that like you love working with this type of individual, maybe these types of conditions and this types of characteristics? So I'd love to know that before we head out here.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously we are all our own first client. And so I would say I most commonly see high-performing men and women who generally have a type A personality and obviously a commitment to themselves. I think that whether it be men or women, there are small changes that I see as far as the way my program runs versus or seeing a man versus seeing a woman. But innately, it's very much like they're health conscious already. They are doing a lot of the things foundationally, but something's missing the mark. And so how can we optimize? How can we use some of these tools, these data points to correlate and figure out how to better optimize what they are doing? And 9 times out of 10, it works exceptionally. And then that obviously one time is generally that there's something else underlying going on, whether it's mental, emotional. And then I always refer out for those things, right? Like there are tons of modalities that can help us heal. And if I'm not the right person, and maybe you starting with acupuncture or, therapy, talk therapy, then that's kind of how I approach each individual person.
Cool. So if they'd like to work with you or just learn more about you, where can they find you, my friend?
They can find me either on Instagram, renewed.holistics, or on my website, renewedholistics.com.
All right, our signature question to finish up the show today, the one we finish with everyone. If we could give you a magic wand and you could wave it and you could get every single viewer and listener to do just one thing for their health, what would that be? And that does mean that you could either get us to all start doing something, or you can get us to all stop doing something. What's that one something that Kailey gets us to do?
I think it would probably be a wind down routine. If there is any time throughout the day that is entirely dedicated to you, it should either be the time when you wake up in the morning or the time right before you go to bed. If you don't have either one of those things and you're constantly stimulated from the moment you open your eyes to the time that you close them, you've got some things to work on. So it's definitely wind down routine, sleep like it's your job.
Uh-oh, folks, this one thing today was meant for me. So if it applies to you guys, that's great. But Kailey helped at least one person already. I can guarantee that. So if we can get a thank you in the chat below, please do that whenever you can. And Katie, if you did not figure out that email thing, just shoot me a message on Facebook, just my normal name, find me there. And I'll help you out to get the carpooling situation set. But Kailey, thank you again for coming on today, especially on relatively short notice. I kind of threw her in and she was like, no problem, let's do it. And I will